I am so honored to be here today, and even more honored to have the opportunity to tell you some stories. I grew up in a tiny town. Leadville, Colorado is a small mining town, and the houses were mainly old Victorians, and these tiny Victorian homes had even tinier closets, and my mother's bedroom had one of the smallest and the most antiquated, and on the door was a doorknob made of marble, and instead of turning it half a turn to the right to open, you had to turn it at least two full turns to the left and jimmy it just right to get it open. And on the very top shelf of that closet was her sari. My mom is of Assyrian descent. My grandmother, my biological grandmother, was Syrian, and my mom, despite having been adopted, kept touch with that side of her cultural heritage. And so I would ask every Saturday if my mom would wrap me in that sari in the appropriate way, and I would wear it for Halloween. But about third grade, I realized that the sari wasn't something that most people thought was cool, and I realized that it was something that there was a reason that my mom kept it on the very top shelf of her closet. And I began to realize that there are many things that we keep in the closet, many things that we keep hidden. And I was poor, and my family was very poor, and so I learned with time to keep my whole house hidden, and my father was an alcoholic, and I learned to keep that hidden. And I think all of us have things like that that we keep hidden. It might be as simple as the slight curvature in your spine that you don't ever want to show in the locker room, or maybe a blemish on your left butt cheek that you don't want anybody to know about. Or maybe it's something about your cultural heritage that you try to keep hidden. And many times these things that we keep in the closet are very, very simple. Like when I was in college, I was studying both chemistry and biology and math, and I also was doing fairly serious undergraduate research in a electron paramagnetic resonance lab, but I also was a passionate cross-country skier, and I was on the cross-country ski team, and I was a varsity athlete. And I remember one day my PI saying to me, "Rachel, it's just a shame that you're on that athletic scholarship, or you could spend more time in the lab." So I kept it hidden that I wasn't on an athletic scholarship. I was actually on an academic scholarship, but we all have things like that that we hide. You might be an engineering student who loves poetry, but you keep that carefully hidden amongst the other engineers. And there are things, we lose voice when we hide these things in the closet, and we get used to having lost that voice. And sometimes this can become big things that we keep hidden in the closet. I asked my students, when I found out I would be speaking at this authenticity conference, I asked them to share with me their thoughts about authenticity. And one of my students sent me an email, and this was one of the things that she said: "A lack of authenticity affects everything, everyone. I think at times we see it as an individual issue, but it's so much more important, so much more impactful than that. It's the reason that victims of sexual assault and domestic violence don't come forward. They feel that they are alone and that they will be judged. We know that we will be punished and shamed for those things that are not considered okay by society." When I was 18, I fell in love with a woman, and I found a whole new shelf on that dark closet, a place to keep those conversations where you would use pronouns like we, and you would tell stories about that person that you love, and you learn not to ever speak about those things. And even when you do manage to quote unquote come out of the closet, you realize that in fact it's not such a heroic gesture, and that in fact coming out of the closet really isn't a thing. I mean, really, we might think of closets as maybe being the wrong metaphor in many ways. It seems, in fact, that we need a new metaphor, for a closet is just too opaque. One is either in or out of the closet. And it's implied that with one wonderfully heroic moment, in a moment of self-awareness, that you throw open the doors and exit the confinement of the hidden space, only to be forever affirmed in your identity. And that is, I think, what we think about authenticity as being: something that you do, something that you are. You become authentic because you choose to show your true self. And yet nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, the closet is something that one is never really in, and yet it is also something you can never fully leave. Because when you are passionate about something or someone, you can't keep that completely invisible. So it's too large to fit in the closet, and it breaks free. People know. But also, you can never really leave the closet because, in fact, people don't have the vocabulary to allow you to talk about your love or whatever it is that you might keep hidden there. And thus, a new metaphor is needed. And maybe what is the right term for something that perpetually constrains and yet never truly veils? Maybe we need the metaphor of nylons. So I think it's needless to say at this point that I struggled a great deal with the theme for this conference, authenticity, come as you are. Because who we are is very deeply closeted for nearly every person. And it's not really something that we choose to be authentic. In fact, what I realized that finally allowed me to be here to talk about this tonight is that, in fact, the interfaces between authenticity and leadership are absolutely everything. I've been fortunate for the last 16 years to be the co-coach for the men's and women's national championship Nordic ski team. I've also been very honored to be a teacher of microbiology, biochemistry, chemistry for the last 14 years. And in these spaces, one of my greatest goals has always been to invite everyone's voice, to try to find ways, and all kinds of ways, sometimes silly ways, to invite students' voices, and to not shame those voices when they're heard, to not judge the stories that they tell. People's stories are beautiful, and to be able to hear them no matter how sad they might be is so important. It is what authenticity is. And so, in fact, authenticity is a gift that as leaders we can give to those who we surround ourselves with. We can allow authenticity by choosing not to judge the stories, choosing not to say to people, that's too much information or that's overshare, choosing to listen to stories, to hear stories, and to allow those stories to be told. Choosing to allow varying intimacies and not to label those intimacies, choosing to celebrate those intimacies. So I want to end today with a quote. This quote is from Anne Frank, and it says, "Look at how a single candle can both defy and define the darkness." I think this is so beautiful because we can certainly light the space that confines us, and we can see just that space that keeps us in the closet. But we also have the power to defy that darkness. That is, we all have the power to liberate, and as leaders, we have the power to give the gift of authenticity in those around us.